Welcome back to Not Enough Projects. Today we got a new one. We have this 99 Porsche Boxster, bought sight unseen at an auction. My younger brother was looking for a project, so he is the one who actually purchased this car. It's fine automobile. Probably not the smartest purchase, but
yeah, that's what I bought.
The clutch is totally gone. It hardly even moves under its own power. It does seem to run pretty good. It's got good tires and it's a worn out old German car, so it's about what you expect. So today we're going to be pulling the transmission out and taking a look at the clutch and hopefully replacing it and seeing what other problems this thing has. There you go. Set it down. Well, first time seeing the engine. It doesn't look exploded. This thing scraped. Got hit by something. Well, at least that's metal. That thing looked exploded though.
That's good. Just kind of hoping that.
Grab little sockets and stuff. Alright, so surprisingly, Porsche made our lives pretty easy on this. Everything's pretty accessible from the bottom. We just gotta drop this skid plate, this cross member, the half shafts and transmission mounts, and then just undo the housing bolts and out it comes. So surprisingly easy for German engineering. So we're gonna start with the skid plate, 15mm bolts. So go ahead and start undoing them. Alright, nice. You get all the dirt in your face. Nice and dirty. Yeah, so these stiffeners need to come out, so we've got to undo all these nuts and the bolts at the very far end. And put your face over here. That's a little better. Push up really hard. Maybe. Try it. Yeah. Feel it. All the dirt getting in or something? Well, it's because it's starting to round. Oh. Gonna do the same over there. This top part here. Yeah, that's right, because the whole stiffener bar is gonna come down. It's not heavy, but be aware. Yep. I would put it on the outside, mix it with the wheel. Alright, so definitely when you're new to projects and that kind of thing, it's definitely a good idea to bag and tag, is the method, I call it that, all the bolts. You kind of, over time, develop a memory for these kind of things where certain bolts go certain places and you can figure it out really easy. But it's not a bad idea to bag them. If you're not going to do that, at least box them up all together. Lots of bolts suck. Alright, so now our skid plate should come down. Make sure your face is maybe good. I bet. I'm gonna go grab a pry bar. Looks like the skid plate took a good hit at some point and did its job, but it's a little tweaked on the studs, so just need to help it. You may not need it, just try wiggling it. There you go. Doesn't go all the way off. There we go. So it looks like this thing saw plenty of off-roading in its lifetime. It came from kind of more of a rural part of the state, so I'm sure it got lots of gravel roads. It looks like it's actually missing the belly pan, just the plastic belly pan that goes over the engine. So, I mean, no big deal, but definitely something to note on an unknown auction vehicle. Next up, we're going to go ahead and drop our sway bar because it needs to come off so that the tail end of the transmission can come down and so that we can take our exhaust off. Alright, so we got a 15 millimeter for our end link, which is probably going to spin. I'm going to take it off. So we need to grab a wrench. Go ahead and take the other side off.
How many miles?
120,000, I think.
That's not too bad. Thread it back on the stud. Alright, and then we should have 13 millimeter bolts for our sway bar mount. Alright, next we will get our exhaust out of our way. Luckily around where we live we don't have to deal with rust so much. So this should be pretty easy for us, fingers crossed. Spoke too soon. So we snapped one stud, probably many to follow, but we'll just need to drill them out and put bolts and nuts in. Yep. We'll start heating these just to give ourselves a fighting chance of not having to replace every stud. Probably. Okay. 1 down, 3 to brake. Oh, I'm crap loose. Alright, now I've got to unplug all of our O2 sensor connections up here on top of the cross member. Yeah, there we go. So I'm guessing this part pops up. Alright, so this red piece comes out, which lets the connector come apart. Now we do it on this side. There we go. And then we also have our post-cat O2s way up in here on both sides. Same connector though, so that makes life easy. Alright, so I think the only thing holding our exhaust up still are 4 bolts, 2 down here and 2 up top that you can't really see. So we'll pop these out, and then we should be able to slide our exhaust back and down. Alright, this chassis brace right here blocks access to this nut that holds the exhaust up, so we're going to take it out. Just held on with 2 15mm bolts. Take it out the rest of the way while I hold this. I don't think we can take it out all the way until we have the exhaust out, but now at least maybe get to the bolt up there. Okay, now we can drop the exhaust down. Hopefully. You can let that separate if you just hold that piece up. Pop that up. Alright, so that whole thing was kind of a cluster because everything was already loose and we got all this heat shield weirdness going on. So I don't know what that deal was there, but I think the ticket is remove both the upper and lower bars completely, especially the lower one. I don't know why everything was loose, kind of weird. Also the passenger side mid-pipe, or whatever you want to call it, had slipped out of the muffler section because both the bolts are missing on the clamps. Weird. Alright, I think next we're going to take off our half shafts. So they're held on with a bunch of, looks like Allen or hex headed bolts. These are all 6mm Allen heads. See how I'm doing that, Isaac? Mm-hmm. You can't get on it down here because of the angle with the boot, so you gotta hop on up there. And you gotta brace the tire with your knee to keep it from spinning. So just go around, undo all of them on both sides. There we go. Alright, so before we completely remove these, Porsche probably tells us, because most of the German manufacturers do, to mark these half shafts so we can put them back the same way. My opinion is it doesn't really matter that much. We'll do it though, just because if it's balanced or whatever, I don't know. We'll do it, but I don't think it does anything. Okay, here it is. Alright, so now we need to undo any electrical connections. There should only be like a reverse light and a neutral safety switch. And then we also need to unbolt our slave cylinder from the transmission. Looks like our slave cylinder is way up on top on the driver's side. And there's a couple bolts that go in this way. So we'll undo those and the slave cylinder should be able to pop out. We'll see. And then let me look for electrical connections. And then for electrical connections, I think we just got this one right here. It looks like we actually have a little plastic wire tie up there that we'll undo. And that should do it for our electrical connections. Alright, so it looks like for the slave cylinder we got another 6mm Allen head bolt here holding the hard line to the transmission. So we'll pop that out. And the slave cylinder, 13mm. Once we got the one bolt out, our slave comes out with a little bit of persuasion. Looks like it's got a nice spider nest on there too. Alright, and just let that hang here. Next we can go ahead and start removing bell housing bolts. Alright, so actually before we tackle the bell housing, let's pop our shift cables out. So I believe they just pop off here. Looks like our boots are a little worse for wear. Those winding star boots are pretty bad. And the other one's up top. Off that comes. Then we also got to remove them from the transmission. Looks like we got to pull this piece. Alright, so to pull our shift cables out, we bend the tabs in like so. Lift up and out. Same up top. Here's our shift cables. Now we'll undo our 7 bell housing bolts. Alright, so it looks like Porsche gave us a mixture of 16mm bolts and what I think is triple square. There's 7 of them total. So we'll go around and take them all out. May leave one in loose for good measure, just to keep it from falling on us while we, oh, actually we gotta remove one more thing. Alright, so looks like Porsche put this triple square to number 9 right here. My triple square sockets and all the ones I've seen are like this. They're too long. I don't know how you could get a ratchet on there. Luckily, these are made by pressing a bit into a socket, and the hex on the bit is a 10mm. So I'm hoping you can just use the flats on there to turn it and get it started. Of course, it's probably gonna be torqued super tight, so I don't know how this is gonna work out. Oh man. Jeez. Alright, so here's the trick I had to use to get this bolt out. I'm sure they make short enough triple square sockets. I do not have one, so luckily the bit on my socket is exposed a little bit. It's got a 10mm hex that you can put a wrench on, and then you take another one and you do the old school trick to extend the leverage. And now we just gotta lock the bolt. I don't need that one anymore. Little fun fact, this transmission is actually an Audi transmission. And you can tell that because there's Audi marks right here. At least the 5-speed. I don't know. If they did a 6-speed, it might be different. I can't remember. But so any parts you buy, instead of buying Porsche parts, which are marked up 10 times, you buy Audi parts, which are only marked up 6 times. You can definitely tell someone's been around monkeying in here. Got a missing heat shield bolt, or nut, I guess, and then we got a bunch of weird stuff going with the heat shields back there. I don't know what they were doing, but they didn't do it right, whatever it was. Can you count our bolts, Isaac?
Yeah.
Alright, so this last bolt, as I undo it, we can see our transmission starting to separate. So we're going to leave it as it is. We're going to get our support jacks in place. So on the oil pan of the transmission, luckily they were still metal then. So we're going to put a little block of wood and a jack just to keep pressure on here. And we're going to put a transmission jack under the transmission just to get everything supported while we take the mounts out. So Isaac's going to slide me the block jack. Cool. You and I get on the other side and pump.
Yeah.
A little bit more. Just like one pump. Okay, that's good. One more pump. Here, actually, we can. You can let it down slow. Just stop it as soon as it gets loose. Okay, that's good. Now go ahead and pump up. A little bit more. Okay, that's good. Okay, so we got both the engine and the transmission supported. And I lost the wrench, so that's good. Alright, so now we'll take out our final bell housing bolt. It's a little bit easier to get in here when you don't have 2 jacks. They make a support bar that you spread across the top to support the engine. Looks like that was actually a nut. Okay. Put that in there, Isaac. So now it's just our transmission mounts, which are also 15 millimeters. Alright, so you can see we're free here. Doesn't look like we can pull the mount out all the way. It's got this really weird, I don't even know what that is, pentastar or something. But this should be out of our way if we pull back. Last bolt, hopefully, at least to get the transmission out. All right. Now the fun part. Should just need to pull this way and wiggle some. Just like that. Now we do have the input shaft into the transmission, or into the engine rather, with the clutch. So, I'll have to come back a little ways. We may be off of it now. These mounts are hanging us up a little bit. Try dropping down just a hair. Oop, yeah, don't pull that. We're free now. Those mounts sure are annoying. I'll have to try to figure out what socket that is. Now I just gotta make sure we're clear of the half shafts. And surprisingly, with how low the cars are going, this is one of the first cars I've ever dropped the transmission on that you can actually get it out while still on the jack. Kind of. Surprisingly, our release bearing feels pretty good, which is going to be important for the next part, which I'm probably going to catch a lot of heat for. All right, so just to give you the, just to set the ambiance here, there's now a horrible smell of burnt clutch. It actually visually doesn't look terrible. I was kind of expecting to see just shrapnel from exploded clutch everywhere, but doesn't look too weird. So let's go ahead and take off the pressure plate and see what horrors are hiding beneath. How's that? Okay, well, let's see if the impact can do it. Kind of worried I'm gonna break my bit. Not an impact bit. Oops. Now this is under spring pressure, so we're gonna want to kind of work in a pattern. Alright, leave that in so I don't crush myself. Looks like it's being held on by the studs. Yep, that's One beat up clutch. This pressure plate should be silky smooth, but we've got a huge wear mark from our rivets. Oops. Now our actual clutch disc worn down. You can see the friction material was now with the rivets. And our flywheel, same deal, groovy. These are dual mass flywheels. They're not really resurfaceable, especially once they got all this heat in them. So let's pop these out and get our new clutch in. All right, now we'll pop our old flywheel off. There's clutch material filling all the Torx bolts, so pick that all out. And then these are T55s. Looks like we got a little bit of a rear main leak. Nothing too crazy though. Now, one common issue on these 986s is the intermediate shaft bearing failing. You access it from right here, and now is the time to replace it if it needs replaced. But what we're going to do is we're just going to check in the oil filter for any metal shavings or anything like that. And since the rest of this is an unknown, we're going to leave it for now because it's an expensive part. So for now, it's probably going to get left unless there's obvious signs of damage in the oil filter. Plus, the 99 is less failure prone than the later 2000 and up because they swapped from a double roller to a single. Alright, so there's not a ton of metal shavings or anything like that in here, so I think we're probably going to be fine. Worst case, we have to pull it back apart, but I think we're fine. Alright, so you might remember I said I'm probably going to catch some flack for this next part, but we're going to be going with this used clutch and flywheel setup just because an actual new setup is close to $1,000 and the rest of the car's an unknown. So this is not the right way to do it, is what we're going to do. So it's a little questionable, but we'll clean it up with wire wheel and see how good we can get it. We may end up needing to replace our pilot bearing, but we'll see. Alright, so everything cleaned up okay-ish. I'm not super excited about how it is. There's a couple hot spots. You can see there's a little bit of friction material left in here. Again, this is not the right way to do it. It is a way to do it, and it's the way we're going to do it. For now, at least. If it all checks out, then at some point this is getting a new clutch and everything. The pilot bearing feels okay, so I'm going to re-lube it with high temperature grease and call it good. Alright, so the release bearing or the throwout bearing is marginal, I would say. It doesn't have any roughness. It does have a little bit of chattery kind of sound, but again, this doesn't need to last 100,000 miles, so we're gonna send it, I guess, and see what happens. Alright, we got all of our pivot points on the clutch fork lubed up. That's good enough, so we will put this back in the transmission now. So this is where the slave cylinder pushes on it, and as the slave cylinder extends, it pushes onto the pressure plate of the clutch and releases it. Alright, so next we'll get our new flywheel up and on, it is indexed with that pin on the crankshaft. So these are torque to yield bolts that technically need to be replaced. We're gonna see if we can get away with reusing them. If they yield too early or they feel weird, then we'll have to order in a new set. But again, we're just trying to get this thing moving so that we can actually see what's going on with it. Alright, so our torque spec on these is 19 foot-pounds and then an additional 120 degrees. So we're going to need to wedge something in the teeth of the flex plate, the flywheel, just to keep it from turning, because we're going to be putting some serious torque on it. That should hopefully do it. Find out. Alright, so all the bolts seem to torque up just fine. Nothing weird on how they stretch or anything. So we're gonna run it. Now we need to get the clutch and the pressure plate on. We don't have the alignment tool, so this is gonna be a little bit tricky, but we'll see if we can get it close enough to slide the transmission on. Alright, so this clutch is asymmetric, so there's a dish on it. It only fits one way, which is easy, so that's how it goes. So we'll lay that on the pressure plate. Alright, so we got these studs on the flywheel. Those key into the holes on the pressure plate. Okay, so we'll get it close-ish. Now what the alignment tool does, if you haven't seen it before, is it's a little plastic thing that basically mimics the input shaft, and it goes in here and centers on the pilot bearing. Because if it's off center, then the input shaft will spline with the clutch, but it won't be able to go into the pilot bearing. So what we're gonna have to do, and luckily we can kind of get my head up in here and look, is we gotta make sure as best we can that the friction disc is centered in relation to the pilot bearing. Just like that. And hopefully we'll get it first try. Otherwise we're gonna have to try to fit the transmission up and then find out it doesn't go in and then pull it back out and then loosen these up and then do it again. Alright, so we'll try to hold this centered and evenly tighten up the pressure plate bolts. Just do a little bit at a time, otherwise it'll get all cockeyed. Okay, once we have all of these bottomed out, we'll go around and torque them all to 17 foot-pounds. Alright, now we got all of our pressure plate bolts torqued, so we should be ready to get our transmission back up and in. I think we're going to remove these mounts just to make our lives a little easier. I don't know why I didn't think of it, but we can just remove these bolts here and the whole mount assembly should come out. That'll make our lives a little bit easier getting the transmission back up and in. So let's pop those out and raise the transmission back up. Okay, I think we'll just try doing it with one out. If we don't have to remove both, we might as well not. That may give us just enough play.
The half shaft's getting, I don't know if it's bound up or not.
All right, got the transmission made back up with the engine. A little bit tricky sometimes without the clutch alignment tool, but if you get it ballparked when you tighten the pressure plate down and then get the transmission onto the engine as much as you can, and then you just finger tighten some bolts on there, maybe put a tiny bit of preload, press the clutch, which should release the clutch, and it should allow the disc to move a little bit and give you enough slack to finally get it on the last bit. So we're gonna go ahead and put all of our different size bolts back in where they came from and torque them down. All right, we got our bell housing bolts all torqued up, so now we can get our transmission mounts back up and in. Then we can get the jack out of our way. So you may remember that we broke all 3 studs on one side for the exhaust, so we got to grind the heads off the studs, push them out, and then we'll use bolts. All right, so now we are ready to get our exhaust back up and on. So we're gonna get these hangers on first. The whole exhaust situation was really messed up. Isaac, can you hand me the 13? You have the new bolts of it. Alright, so we're back together. The exhaust is a mess on this thing. It's all bent up, I think, so I don't know. Anyways, we got it fired up because we're going to do just a quick sanity check before we get the sway bar link and a couple other struts in there. So go ahead and put it in first. You don't need to give it any gas. Okay, clutch in. Let it out. Alright, clutch in. Second. Alright, clutch in. I don't hear any throw-out bearing noise, surprisingly, which I don't know how that is, but we'll take it. The clutch kind of works at least, so I think we're good to go ahead and get everything else up in there. It's like 4 bolts left, so we'll do that, drop it down, and I guess take it for a spin real quick. That's good. Yeah, I am. I got the clutch installed and the car reassembled. Seems to be running and driving up and down the driveway at least pretty well. We did run into a little bit of a hiccup with the coolant situation. It seemed to overheat and puke coolant everywhere. I think it was just super low on coolant, and there's a special bleeder valve you pop open on these, and as soon as we popped that open, refilled it and got it up to temp, it seemed to do okay. So I think it's good now, hopefully. So we're gonna go take it for a rip, make sure the clutch is good to go. Surprisingly, we don't have any weird throw-out bearing noise or anything. So pretty happy with that. So let's go take down the road and see how it drives. Clutch actually feels great, which is kind of surprising to me. I was expecting maybe it would put up some fights, but clutches are a lot more forgiving than we probably tend to think. Now that we got this thing running and driving, we're gonna be getting all the little issues fixed up. The biggest one is the rear harness and the trunk seems to have some funkiness going on. With the headlights on, it actually starts to smoke. Oh yeah. All right, so we got all kinds of weird just wires just hanging out in the open, twisted together, corrosion everywhere. We got these stupid Scotch lock connectors, and somebody had some stuff left over from wiring their house. Figured that'd be good for the car. There's like latches missing. Neither the front or the trunk latch, so they just kind of hang out. Windows don't work, top is trash. So next time we'll be going through those and getting this car hopefully back to daily driver status. So I will see you guys then.